Welcome back to the Piping Pastor. Today we'll be taking a look at some more traditional poetry by getting into our poetry of Papua New Guinea. Well, in our last Poetry in the Bible series, we were looking at the poetry of Tibet. And it was contemporary poetry in that it was, within the last 50, 60 years or so. So I thought it might be nice now to get into some more traditional stuff. Now, the poetry of Papua New Guinea, the native people groups of that region, it still exists to this day. The traditions still carry on. The format is largely unchanged. It's simply a matter of subject matter. Oh, and by the way, in my Whitlock ebony pipe here, my little travel pipe, I am enjoying some Set-Left Revelation Match. It's a great afternoon tobacco when it's a bit hot and muggy outside. Einstein had good taste. So, in any case, now the poems I was looking at for today, there's two. They're short, there's two. I think these struck me largely because this wrapped up that series on eschatology for theology talks. Kind of talking about ends and things like that. And so as I was reading through this book earlier, these really kind of grabbed my attention because they have to do with death. Which, when you look at the poetry of anyone, any particular people group, when they speak about, the end of times, the end of things, or death, and these really big moments, it's kind of a unifying thing because, death is no respecter of persons. We all experience death. And the way that we interpret it, the way we understand it, the way we represent it in our art says a lot about each one of us individually. And it says a lot about the people groups to which we adhere or identify with. So there's two here. The first one is the Song of a Girl Journeying to the Country of the Dead. Place changes, dawn breaks, birds are waking. My chest is marked. Handsome boys look away. Spirit canoe with youngsters, but road leads me away. Wind whispers, dark cloud meets me, current drags me on. That's a story about a young girl her chest is painted because she's been decorated for funeral rites. And as she's traveling along this route to get to the funeral barge to be set out, the young men, the handsome boys, are looking away in a period of remorse and perhaps even anger at some young beautiful woman being taken away from them. But there's another thing in there too, because the place changes and dawn breaks. There is a new beginning. There is a change. There is something positive. Birds are waking. It's not just about death and mourning and loss and sadness. It's about a change. It's about a movement onto something else. Sadness is a part of it, but it's not all of it. And I was thinking about that when I read this other one as well, because I'll come back to that a bit more, and we'll tie this in a bit more. But this one is two crows. Two crows feeding on a nest of ants. Two crows raining, falling heavily, cannot slow them down. Ants bite in vain. Irritation stays not the beak of hunger and death. So in both these poems, you have this idea of death as the great ender of all things. But in the first poem, you have that air of hopefulness, that air of something better that's coming along afterwards, or something at least different, a change of some sort. It's not an end; it's a transference to a new beginning. And in the second one, the crows represent hunger and death, of course. And the ants have no effect on the beaks. The ants are not bothering the crows at all, but they keep going. They keep biting. The ants keep fighting the crows, even though they know it's a lost cause. So there's this air of not quite defiance, but at least of energetic trying, of not just meek acceptance, of continuing to live even in the face of death. In the Christian community, especially in the evangelical community, there's been a move in the last, I'd say 15, 20 years. A movement away from funerals. We don't have funerals anymore. We have celebration of life ceremonies. I've had occasion to provide, these ceremonies, of course, through my ministry and so forth. And to some, it may be a semantic argument, because they're largely in format the same. But the key difference in the celebration of life ceremony is that mourning is essentially absent. Now, there have been some in recent years who have tried to make the move back towards that, to accepting mourning as a part of death and the funeral and so on and so forth, or the celebration of life ceremony. But largely, that's the way it is. And I was thinking about this in that recent video from our brother Trekking Piper, whose great friend and minister had just recently passed, and he was describing the celebration of life ceremony, the funeral, but it was a celebration of life ceremony for that pastor. And everyone was joyous and smiling and happy because they're meant to be, right? This is a person who is going on to their eternal reward, a person who's going on to their home with Jesus. And that's a good thing, and we should be happy for them who have completed their life's journey, completed their work here on earth, and now get to experience eternity with Christ. That's a great thing for them, right? So there is that aspect to it, but we still can be allowed to mourn. We still can be allowed to be sad. The funeral is a time to process, get closure, but also, like the Bible says, there is a time to dance, but there is also a time to mourn, right? You have to allow yourself that, and simply thinking of death either as completely a sad, tragic event, or B, something joyous to celebrate because the person's gone on to the reward, isn't in line scripturally, and it's certainly not in line with the human experience. We have to allow ourselves time to be sad, time to mourn, time to grieve, and at the same time, we can allow ourselves to be happy for our friends who have gone to their eternal reward, who have completed their life's journey. But it's both things. And that wisdom is not something that's just in the Bible. I mean, it's in the Bible. I mean, there's a reason that time to weep and a time to dance, right? And that goes over in various different portions of the Bible. But we see here the native peoples of Papua New Guinea. And this is before their exposure to Christianity. These are ancient poems. They had the same basic idea, that death was not just one thing. We are not just to react to it one way. We can be happy, we can be sad, we can be joyous, and we can mourn. We can walk and chew bubblegum at the same time, essentially. So we need not tamp down all of our mourning at a loss. Rather, we can experience both. And I think the poetry of these native peoples beautifully expresses that. And it's something that we can all probably learn from. So, well, that is it for this time. My revelation match is rather damp today. I should have done the moisture test that Parsimonious Piper uses. In any case, I'm going to relight, turn my attention back to my pipe, and some more reading. So, hope you have a lovely week. As always, happy reading.